WMC-TV, Memphis.
This is the NBC Television Network.
Hey, well, we've got another show on the way. Me and Largo, we're having internet issues as usual. I think that's going to be an ongoing thing. Chat's pretty lively tonight. Let's see who all's here.
It's going to be one of those nights, Bill.
Here we go.
Well,
going on down the line here. Hey, Largo. Did Johnny just transform?
Bill, you froze up there for a second.
Yeah. Did Johnny just transform into a spanner? Yes, he did, and so did Gojitron. Hey, what's happening, Adam? I hope you're. I'll tell you what, man. This is going to be a hell of a damn night once again, folks. We're doing the best we can here. Kind of just.
Oh, Lord of man.
Yeah, just kind of bear with us here. Hey, Susudio, good to see you in the house. Time to talk some Lord Greystoke, says Gojitron. Yeah, we're gonna do that here in just a minute. Said Epic Badger wants to know, are we going to discuss the hit song Tarzan Boy? We might, maybe.
We might touch on it.
Yeah. Sham Bollocks there, my friend Bjorn. Good to have you in the house. Yeah, if you can dodge a wrench, exactly. And yes, it's going to happen all night tonight, Susudio. And we're well aware of our shortcomings when it comes to internet. Yeah, I could hold up some cue cards. I think that gets the chat caught up, Largo. You and I have been working hard today on this, and I think we've got a pretty good show lined up for tonight. Working on this, but like I said, our internets are gonna mess with us a little bit. So
yeah, I should have burned some incense to the machine gods, or got some tikis or something. But at 9:58, I had a brownout, power outage. The fact that I have a battery backup is the only thing that kept my system from crashing. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. But if you see my lights flicker, that's that's the fun of living in the bush.
Yeah, Exactly. And Adam says, my cold is rough. I slept the day away. Well, sleeping is a good thing, especially when you're sick like that. It kind of helps you to get better. I know I've been nursing a cold and a cough as well. It's getting better. Let's see what Johnny said. Where are you, X51, when we need you?
Indeed.
I've got a fresh cup of coffee. I see Largo sitting there sipping on him a coffee as well.
I am.
So, what do you want to start out with? You want to go straight into this, or do you want to just sit here and kind of chat for a little while and see if our connections kind of get a little better?
Well, I would say if we're clear at the moment, let's not push our luck. I'd say Sally forth, my friend. Go ahead and roll with it.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and start this. And we didn't practice this, but let's go ahead and try anyway.
Well, that went pretty well.
There we go. Not too bad, not too shabby at all. And I got
So
a
as
little bit
you
of music
guys,
play here in the
yeah, I was gonna
background.
say, people. Ooh. So as you might have noticed, we've got a theme tonight. We're gonna try spotlighting some of our favorite weird and fantastic things from all over the interwebs and the days that gone before and who knows where. So tonight we start with Tarzan.
Absolutely. And we got a slideshow that we're going to put up here as we do our little chatting about it. A lot of what you know about the pop culture Tarzan is not necessarily what is about the literary Tarzan. And one of the things that I've kind of wanted to do, and Largo with me as well, is maybe try to introduce you to the literary Tarzan, because it's a much richer character than what you're used to seeing in pop culture and movies, even
The studio
cartoon.
knows what's going on. We're going to talk about Johnny for sure.
Yeah, we're going to touch on as much as we can without going too far down this rabbit hole. And Largo and I discussed this at length. We're going to do these spotlights on a lot of these pulp fiction and maybe comic characters from the golden age. And if you guys like what we're doing with these, as we spotlight these, we can also go into depth as well in future episodes. So that's something that may be coming on down the line. Let's take a look at the chat here. Epic Badger says, and Q History Channel guy saying Tarzan, aliens.
I don't have the hair for the ancient aliens thing, but
Yeah. Johnny Swartzen says, jungle adventurer or progressive nudist. Stay tuned to find out. And yes, there was a song called Guitar Zan by Ray Stevens. I remember listening to that, and of course, a lot of what we see in parody, such as George of the Jungle, kind of is more of a parody of the pop culture Tarzan. But as we go into the literary Tarzan, you may find that a lot of things that you thought were true about this character are not necessarily so. I've dropped something here on the floor, and I've got the fish for it.
Fair enough. Well, we're definitely going to take a look at what we think we know about Tarzan. I myself was kind of introduced to Tarzan, like many of you may have been, by the Filmation cartoon that came out, and the what was it? Is it Ron Eli, the fellow that did the TV show back
He
in the
did.
70s?
Ron Eli was the TV Tarzan. I believe that Tarzan TV show was in the late 60s, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I probably saw it in reruns then, but that was very popular on Saturday afternoons after the cartoons had run out.
And I do believe that a couple of those episodes were strung together into kind of like pseudo movies.
Yeah, kind of like made for TV kind of film.
There was a movie I remember called Tarzan Goes to India. Edgar Rice Burroughs. Edgar Rice Burroughs
Yep.
studio. And Bjorn Jorgensen says he's all ready to learn here. I have dropped my lighter in the floor.
Uh-oh.
It is lost.
Carpet monster.
Yeah, the carpet monster's got it. So if you see me starting to bug out, I'm probably going to bug out and go find something else to light my cigarette with. But let's get this slideshow on the road here. According to the first slide here, Tarzan has been one of the best-known literary characters in the world, adapted many times, complete or in part, for radio, television, stage, and cinema. It's been adapted for film more times than any book. There was a radio show back in the day, and I'm talking about like the 1930s, if I'm not mistaken, in which Edgar Rice Burroughs' son-in-law actually played Tarzan in that radio show.
Huh. Yeah.
There was a comic strip. The comic strip was mainly an adaptation of the novels. I think Bern Hogarth did a lot of the artwork for that.
Yeah, great artist. Now, how old is Tarzan? The books came out, what, in the 1920s or the early 30s?
The very first Tarzan story was published in 1912 in a magazine called The All Story.
Wow.
And let me see if I've got some information here on the screen I'm trying to look at. Yeah, it was 1912, in the October 1912, in a magazine called The All Story. And it was the first chapter, basically, of Tarzan of the Apes, and it was entitled Tarzan of the Apes, A Romance of the Jungle, is what it was called. And when all the chapters of that were published there in All Story over a period of time, and they were all collected, of course, in the first novel, which was released in 1914.
Wow. It's older than I thought.
Yeah.
Bjorn, George of the Jungle was awesome, and it was definitely an homage to what came before with Tarzan. So yeah,
absolutely, a lot of the pastiches that we see, such as George of the Jungle, were also based mainly upon the pop culture Tarzan. A lot of it perpetrated by the Johnny Weissmuller movies that we're all familiar with.
Right. Alan Oppenheimer did some great voices for a lot of Filmation stuff. And yeah, he did have a bit in the Tarzan Filmation as well.
He did. And then he also, Ted Cassidy was in that as well. There was a character that was in the very first episode, which was called Tarzan in the City of Gold, which is based upon that novel. Although they changed the name of the City of Gold to Xandor in that particular cartoon series, and the character that Ted Cassidy played was also played by Alan Oppenheimer, I think, later on when they returned to the City of Gold in a future episode after that.
That was the Tomos character, or is that a different one?
I believe he's correct. It was a character that I may be mistaken on that, but he was like a big strong Phobeg was his name,
Okay.
and Ron Eli was in the 70s, said
Mhm.
Susudio. Okay, I thought that was late 60s, but you may be correct. It was might have been 70s. Uh, Johnny Sorensen says it's got to be up there with Sherlock and Dracula films. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, talking about Sherlock Holmes, I think our friend uh, Philip Jose Farmer
Mhm.
had a hand in writing some fiction in which maybe Sherlock Holmes might have went to the jungle and met with Tarzan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole we talked about going over is all the different crossovers of all these
Yeah,
different characters,
we
and
don't
that
want to
may be
get too,
something
we
we'll
don't want to get
do.
too deep into that. And
Right.
Johnny Sorensen says the only one I've seen is the Christopher Lambert movie. The Lambert movie is very interesting because it's in my opinion, there's two parts to that movie. The first part is almost a really really good cinematic adaptation of the first part of Tarzan of the Apes, the novel.
Hmm. The
The second
cinematography in
part
that
kind
film
of
is
goes
beautiful.
downhill. It doesn't really follow the book at all, and it kind of goes off
Yeah,
the rails.
I'd say the script wasn't the best, but the way they filmed it was really well done.
Yes. Uh, and on the screen here, we have some myths that we want to expose, and I'll go over these one by one, and then we'll start getting into them. There's the Tarzan yell, which you may find out is not exactly what you think it was. And then there's the Me Tarzan You Jane Pigeon English that we all remember Weissmuller speaking in those movies. And is his name really Tarzan? We'll get into that. And what does he wear? Is he wearing a loincloth? Is he wearing I think in the last Skarsgård movie, what was that movie called? I can't remember exactly.
Legend of Tarzan, I believe.
Legend of Tarzan. I think all he wore were a pair of torn pants.
Yep.
Um, is he the Lord of the Apes or is he a Lord? We'll get into that as well. So
Hmm.
we'll go on to talk about the Tarzan yell for a moment. Shaitan's Hammer, he's stopping by to say hi and watching the show and perusing Amazon. All right, man. I hope you find something cool there on Amazon.com. Going back over here, when we talk about the Tarzan yell, this is what most people think of. I'm gonna play that one more time at a higher
Volume.
so you can hear it.
Yep.
That
Now
is
that's the
the
one.
MGM Tarzan yell.
Right. And that's Johnny.
That's the one that Wise did.
Mhm.
Go ahead, go ahead, Largo. You wanted to talk. In fact, why don't you talk a little bit about that while I go find something to light a cigarette with?
Okay. So there's two famous yells, the most famous that most people remember, both by Johnny Weissmuller. The first one there was the MGM, which you just heard, and now I'll play the one from RKO. So a little bit different, but definitely memorable. And of course, it's been aped and copied by many, many different people, including George of the Jungle and Carol Burnett. She was famous on her show for doing the Tarzan yell as well, and she did a pretty good job. So, was the Tarzan yell actually part of the original mythos, or is that something that came later? So, let's read about it. The Tarzan yell, or Tarzan's jungle call, is the distinctive ululating yell of the character Tarzan as portrayed by actor Johnny Weissmuller in the films based on the character created by Edgar Rice Burroughs, starting with Tarzan the Ape Man in 1932. The yell was a creation of the movies based on what Burroughs described in his books as simply the victory cry of the bull
Bull
ape.
ape.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And the victory cry of the bull ape, as used by Tarzan in the novels, was only used during a victory. Once he defeated a foe, whether it be an animal or a human or another ape, the victory cry of the bull ape, usually standing over a dead prey of some sort. The
I agree
RKO
with
yell,
Gogitron.
like, see if
Yeah,
someone hurt themselves, man. Well, going back just a little bit before we start talking about the victory cry of the bull ape, let's talk about the MGM Tarzan yell versus the RKO Tarzan yell. First of all, Johnny Weissmuller always said that was himself doing that yell. He maintained that up until his death. And I don't know if that's entirely true or not. I think some of that MGM yell may include his voice, but I think it's been worked on just a little bit. Let's just say maybe some other things added to it. I don't know.
Right.
Uh,
OBS is mentioning the Carol Burnett Tarzan yell. We were talking about the fact that she
yeah,
did a pretty good job.
she did. And the RKO yell had to be different from the MGM yell. First of all, because RKO Pictures, when they got the license from Burroughs to do it, could not do MGM's yell exactly. Second of all, the RKO yell is absolutely 100% Johnny Weissmuller. So, as you can tell, it's a more human voice than what you hear in the MGM yell. Now, there is another Tarzan yell that I'm very, very fond of, and that's the one that you will see in the Filmation cartoons.
Right. Now, before we get into that, there is a lot of speculation about that original Tarzan yell. Some people said that it was mixed, that they actually had a sound engineer mix in like an opera singer and an elephant and God knows what. Mm-hmm. But Johnny Weissmuller and his family have always protested and said, nope, Johnny did that himself. We don't know for sure.
Yeah, he maintained that up until his death. As a matter of fact, let me go over here to Bill and Sue Hillman's ERB zine for a minute. And at the very, very bottom of this page, it's called The Victory Cry of the Bull Apes, The Evolution of the Tarzan Yell, Part 1. And I'm not going to go all the way into this, but I'm going to go down to the bottom. At the very bottom, there's perhaps the final word on the origin of the yell. The claim that the yell is not a human voice at all, instead it was a combination of 5 notes on a soundtrack, a raspy violin string, a camel's moan, a soprano's high note, a dog's growl, and Weissmuller's voice.
Wow, what a list.
One day, Saul Lester met Burroughs for lunch at the Hollywood Athletic Club, and they discussed the yell. Quote, "I don't know how that story got around," Lester said. "The yell comes straight from nowhere but Weissmuller's chest." Edgar Rice Burroughs grinned. "I'm glad you told me," he said. "I myself have been spreading the other story for years. Every time I've been interviewed thinking it was true." So, Saul Lester told Edgar Rice Burroughs that it was absolutely Johnny Weissmuller's voice 100%. Take that for what you will.
Now, in the Christopher Lambert film, I would assume that was a sound engineer. That wasn't him trying to emulate that.
That was probably an animal cry of some sort, I would imagine.
Because in the Greystoke film, they really played up the fact that Tarzan was a mimic, that he could make sounds.
Yeah.
If he heard it, he could repeat it. And that's kind of sort of in the lore, but not exactly.
No. The victory cry of the Bull Apes was not just the yell that Tarzan did. I mean, that was the victory cry of the tribe of Mangani, in which he lived. All of them did that whenever they defeated a foe of some sort, whether it be prey that they were going to eat or another ape in physical combat or what have you, for whatever reason. And whenever that sound would be made, the blood would run cold, and anyone who heard it. The natives in the land were especially afraid when they heard that sound, because they knew that the apes were about. Now, the Mangani apes were vastly different from what you might imagine. People either think Tarzan was raised by either chimpanzees or gorillas. The Mangani are somewhere between that. They're about the size of a human being, which is larger than most chimpanzees, except for one race that lives in Gabon.
Right. Well, we'll get to that, Bill. We'll get to that when we get down the road here a little bit.
Yeah.
But fixing with the yell, from what we know, the one you hear in the movies and subsequent television shows and everything else wasn't actually what Burroughs initially meant by the victory cry. His was something different.
Now, there have been other cries. There was the cry that was used in the radio show, which I'm going to imitate horribly here, but it sounded terrible in my opinion. It went, Tarmangani!
Yeah, some of these we were not able to find clips of. They're not easily found.
There was the Herman Briggs movie. Well, actually, the Herman Briggs movie, Tarzan and the Green Goddess, was actually, I think, a 12-part serial that was cut into a movie. And this was authorized and done by the Burroughs estate itself, Edgar Rice Burroughs. And they attempted to try to adapt the literary Tarzan to screen, failing miserably, in my opinion. It's worth watching, but it's a hard slog, I'll tell you. They adapted the radio show cry into that movie, taking away the tar part and just going, Mangani. Now, what that is, tar Mangani and Mangani. Mangani is the ape word for people, or tribe, or the people. And tar means white. So a tar Mangani would be the white people, or white apes, or great white apes. Tarzan is tar white Zan skin, but we'll get to that when we get to his name.
All right.
Whenever you hear me say Mangani, I'm talking about this race of ape that may or may not have been an actual ape. It may have been more akin to a Sasquatch or.
Right. Well, we'll get to that when we get down to talking about the apes. So the other thing that's as famous as the yell is the swing. He was the swinger baby. Tarzan swinging on vines. Did he do it in the books?
Not exactly.
Yeah, I would imagine vines are notoriously dangerous for breaking and unreliable.
They're very unreliable. They may or may not be anchored well to wherever they start at the top. In the Weissmuller films, he swung a lot on what appeared to be vines, but if you watch some of the sequences in which he was doing a lot of that, it's actually a trapeze.
Right. Yeah, and there were a lot of trapeze artists that were brought in to do the swing and some of the gymnastic stuff so that the main actor didn't get hurt.
In the books, he's referred to as moving through the middle terrace of the jungle with a speed unlike any other. The Mangani were different from the gorilla. The gorilla was referred to as Bolgani, and Bolgani, Gani meaning ape or people, and Mangani meaning great ape or great people. Bol meaning flat or earth. So the Bolgani was of the earth people. Gorillas don't swing through the trees. They don't climb very much. They stay on the ground a lot, and they're much bigger and heavier than the Mangani were.
Right.
So, yeah. All right, here we have Tarzan swinging through the jungle, which looks like he may have La of Opar there in his hands. She was the queen of the city of Opar.
Right. Now, he definitely did move through the trees, but from what we understand from the way it was written in the original books and some of the other source material, it was more of just scrambling from tree to tree any which way he could.
Exactly. Moving from limb to limb, swinging from limbs from one limb to another, as you may have seen monkeys do there in the zoo or whatever, or jumping from one high place to another. Of course, he had great strength in his legs. He had developed his toes to be able to grasp as well as his hands. So he he may have swung by his knees for all I know. He didn't. Burroughs didn't go into a great detail of how he was doing this. He just said he moved through the middle terrace.
Right. Now, OBS, we're going to get to that cartoon. We've got some clips of it. And yes, that yell is in there. And we'll compare it to the one from MGM as well.
Now she
But we're
says
getting there.
she thinks it was Johnny's yell. It was not. Do you want me to go ahead and tell whose yell that was?
We'll get to it. She can wait. Be
All
patient,
right.
dear. We'll get there.
All right.
So
All right.
the swing was a swing and a miss. He might have been a swinger in the films and in cartoons, but in the original lore, no.
But he did move swiftly through the jungle.
Yes, he did.
Me Tarzan, Eugene, as originally depicted Tarzan, John Clayton, is very intelligent and articulate and does not speak in broken English as the classic movies of the 1930s depict him. He can communicate with many species of jungle animals and has been known to be a skilled impressionist able to mimic the sound of a gunshot perfectly. Now, where did you find that from?
That was on one of the Edgar Rice Burroughs fan pages. So I don't know if that's actually in the original books or if that was in one of the later
I've
novels.
read them all, but it's been many, many years since I actually read the actual stories themselves. I remember bits and pieces out of all of them, and spurring my memory can get me to remember something more than other things. But
Right.
I
I
can't
could not find a
recall him
direct
mimicking a
right.
gunshot.
I could not find a direct quote from any of the books, but it is part of the lore. Where it exactly came from, it could have come from the radio show. It could have come from one of the other sources.
Now, as
And
far as speaking languages, now he was gifted when it came to
oh yeah,
speaking languages. Go ahead.
Tarzan can learn a new language in days, ultimately speaking many languages, including that of the great apes, the Mangani. He also spoke French, Finnish, English, Dutch, German, Swahili, many other Bantu languages, Arabic, ancient Greek, ancient Latin, and Mayan, as well as the languages of the Ant-Men and of Pellucidar, which are mentioned in the later novels. So he was
How
quite
much
the
of that did you
polyglot.
guys hear? How much of that did you guys hear? Because I saw it spinning.
Did I wig or did you?
I don't know
I
which one
think
of
we're
us
still
wigged,
going,
but one of us did.
but we can go back through it if we need to. The point is, he was very, very fluent in many
But
languages, and he never spoke pidgin English or broken English.
uh, I mean, everybody
It's
had.
yeah, you froze up there for a second, Bill. Everybody says they heard it, so
Okay, good, cool,
fair
cool.
enough. So that is a myth dispelled, myth busted, as they say. He
Absolutely.
did not speak me Tarzan Eugene. That came from the movies.
Uh, Starting with Tarzan, the Ape Man in 1932 through 12 films from 1948, the franchise was anchored by former Olympic swimmer Johnny Weissmuller in the title role. Weissmuller was directed to portray the Ape Man as a noble savage speaking broken English, in marked contrast to the cultured aristocrat of Edgar Rice Burroughs' novels.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a piece of trivia if Largo doesn't stop me from going down this one. Here we go. Tarzan, John Clayton, the man, spoke his English with a marked French accent.
Mm-hmm.
And this was because of how he learned English. He was such a brilliant person to begin with, even though he had been raised by apes. He knew he was a man because when he learned the secret of the lock of the cabin of his father and was able to enter that, there was a collection of primers and books in there that his mother, Lady Alice, had brought for the baby to learn when they went to Africa. And Tarzan actually used those books to teach himself how to read English. He didn't know what everything was, but he figured out what these symbols that he thought were little bugs running across the page. He learned that they corresponded with ideas so that he could read what was written on the page. Now,
Bill, do you have the Filmation intro queued up?
I
Because
do. I do.
this might be a good time to run that, simply because some people may not know the story, and the Filmation did a pretty good job of encapsulating in the introduction. Here's Tarzan. Here's the basic idea, and most of what they say
Yes.
in there.
Now, one of the things. Now, one of the things that's shown in this intro, I'm going to go ahead and dispel. Now, it shows the cabin in ruins, like a fire had been there. That cabin in the novels was never destroyed that way. It was always intact, and was also used as a base and during many of the adventures that occurred afterwards. But here, we'll go ahead and show that. And
Now,
that's
it does sound a lot like Johnny, but it is different. I'm not sure who did the yell for the cartoon.
I'll tell you who did the yell for the cartoon. That would be Burroughs' grandson, Danton Burroughs.
Wow. Did not know that.
Yeah. Now, going back, it's a convoluted, long story. I'm not going to get into it too deeply, but there was a French lieutenant named Paul Darnot who was marooned there, and he didn't get away when everyone else did, and Tarzan and he had to live together for a period of time. Now, Tarzan had taught himself to read, and he had read every book that was there in the cabin except for one, and that was the diary of his father being in the habit of writing his diary in French. So Tarzan could not read French. Darnot, on the other hand, could. Darnot, being a Frenchman, taught Tarzan to speak, but being a Frenchman, he taught him to speak his native language because it was easier to teach it to him. So Tarzan's first language that he learned after the Mangani language was French. So he always spoke his English with a marked French accent.
It is hard to hear Tarzan speaking with a crazy French accent, but I guess he had one.
Well, it was there. As a matter of fact, one of his pseudonyms that he went by in The Return of Tarzan was Monsieur Jean C. Tarzan of Africa.
Fancy. Yeah, you don't see that in most of the modern interpretations.
No, and it's something that would only translate well in literature. Literature does not always translate well to films or cartoons.
That is true.
This Me Tarzan, You Jane characterization of Tarzan persisted until the late 1950s. And all the way up until today, because whenever anybody thinks about Tarzan, the first thing they do is Me Tarzan, You Jane. And Weissmuller never actually said that in the Weissmuller movies either.
No.
Tarzan, Jane, Tarzan.
That's how it is. But, things become urban legend and myth and get, passed around. But fortunately, some of the more modern films, some of the more modern films have gotten away from that interpretation and have made it more eloquent. And I am happy for that.
Exactly, and that the Christopher Lambier film started that. He learned Darnot in that one taught him to speak English.
Yes,
and of course the later movie, Casper Van Dien movie. If you remember that atrocious piece of crap, he did speak normally in that, and it attempted to try to show a more Burroughs literature like Tarzan. And then, of course, the the Skarsgård movie, Alexander Skarsgård movie, which I enjoyed for what it was.
I thought it was pretty good. Yeah. And he did speak with a pretty good English accent in that one.
Yes. His name isn't Tarzan. We'll talk about that a little bit here in just a second. But his real name is John Clayton II, the Viscount of Greystoke.
Mm-hmm.
He's also known by John Clayton. He's known as the Lord of the Apes or the King of the Jungle, Lord Greystoke, the Ape Man, and the Great Waziri. We'll talk about the Waziri later, but the Waziri were a tribe in which he was adopted of natives there in Africa who became his greatest allies, and he became the war chief of them, the
Right. So
Great Waziri.
he had a lot of different titles, and some were used more often than others. Some of them were kind of misnomers. I mean, he wasn't originally a Lord of the Apes. That was something that came later. And
Uh,
King of the Jungle, was he really the King of the Jungle?
no,
Not
he was
really.
the king of the apes. He was the king of the Mangani for a period of time, yes. Uh, he was also called the Lord of the Jungle because he was an English lord who lived in the jungle. Uh, Now, a lot of people think that he lived in a tree house in the jungle. He had an estate in British East Africa, which is known as Kenya today. It was a vast estate. It had a beautiful home there, farmland. The Waziri lived there. They had moved from where he had found them, and back in the day, they had moved, and their whole tribe moved to Kenya to the estate of the Greystoke estate, which his family owned and was his by birthright.
So there, yeah, it was your typical British colonial house and farm, and the whole 9 yards. So he
Yes, it
lived
was,
fancy.
and he was known throughout the land as the Big Bwana.
Bwana.
Bwana meaning Lord in Swahili.
Very interesting. So now we can talk about the Mangani. I know you've been chomping at the bit.
I have. The Mangani is the name of a fictional species of great apes in the Tarzan novels of Edgar Rice Burroughs, and of the invented language used by these apes. In the invented language, Mangani, meaning great ape or the people or the great people, is the ape's word for their own kind, although the term is also applied with moderations to humans. The Mangani is represented as the apes who foster and raise Tarzan.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the Mangani language real quickly, if you don't mind, Largo.
Please do.
Uh, Burroughs invented himself a language that was spoken by the Mangani with names for many of the animals of the jungle, such as Horta the boar and Hista the snake, or Numa the lion, or Tantor the elephant. There were even terms like Kriga, which means, do you surrender, or something like that, and Kriga, which means I do surrender. The thing is, and Burroughs even hinted at this, what he invented for a language for the great apes is not actually what they spoke. It was what he shown to his readers to give them an idea of what was going on. So Tarzan himself, his name, his ape name Tarzan, comes from the ape words tar meaning white and zan meaning skin. But Burroughs, when Burroughs wrote the book, the very first thing he said was, "The tale was told to me by one who had no business telling it to me." The records of the Colonial Office dovetail perfectly with this story, which means that in the beginning, Burroughs is telling a story of something that may or may not have happened, may have been real. The names were changed to protect the innocent. So, Tarzan, John Clayton, all of that may not have been what actually was, if this was all true or not. Because the way Burroughs wrote his stories, even his John Carter stories, John Carter was a member of Burroughs's family, an uncle of his that told the story to him. The Tarzan stories, if you read, at some point Burroughs met the real person who might have been John Clayton, that he called John Clayton, because many things happened that only Burroughs could have known if he'd heard it firsthand from that person. So was there a real a real John Clayton? No, but there might have been someone with a different name who had something like this happen to them.
Right. And similar to what we see with, like Ian Fleming did with Bond, or what Sir Arthur Conan Doyle did with Sherlock, a lot of what we see in those characters may have been based on a real person, or maybe a homogenation of several different people and attributes that have been put together into a fictional character. But there is a basis of truth. There's a kernel of truth in there somewhere.
And if you want to go down that rabbit hole, I suggest reading Philip Jose Farmer's Tarzan Alive, which we don't have time to even go into. But
Right.
yes,
We'll touch on it briefly, but yes. Next,
what
let's
did
talk about
Tarzan
that old.
wear?
Yeah, let's talk about that butt flap.
What did Tarzan wear? The loincloth has been a fixture in multiple films and TV appearances by Tarzan since 1918.
Yeah. Now this particular one is Buster Crabbe, who many people may recognize as Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers. He's played several.
If I'm not mistaken, the name of this movie was Tarzan the Tiger.
I think that is where this one came from. This was one of the promotional shots, but he played a lot of those great, characters. I remember him mostly from the Flash Gordon serials, but
he also played Buck Rogers. He was kind of like the old version of what's his name, Beef Man Chunk from
Charles Atlas.
I can't remember his name. He played in that horrible movie that Mystery Science Theater 3000 lampooned so wonderfully. But anyway,
for a time in Hollywood, if you needed a hunky heartthrob, Buster Crabbe was your man, and so he played all of these big characters.
Exactly. And I mean, look at the comment section here. Didn't realize it was that old. 1918. Earlier than that, 1912 was when that first story was written, and the novel itself was come out.
Let me go get that. Is Dulcinea, Eduardo's other nemesis. Dulcinea is either chasing the chicken or the cat right now. So let me go fetch her. I'll be right back.
All right. What we see there is we see Buster Crabbe wearing what looks like leopard skin drawers. Let's go to the next slide here while Largo's tending to the dog. Tarzan's wardrobe actually evolves throughout the ERB novels. Now, as you can see, there's the classic depiction of him wearing a what looks like maybe a skin loincloth. I think that's a Jusco painting there, or maybe Frazetta, I'm not for sure. But beside him now, you can see what looks like a typical African game hunter wearing a pith helmet and khakis and jodhpurs and engineer boots. Now, that's kind of what Lord Greystoke looked like most of the time when he was on his estate as the Big Bwana. So for a period of time, and in a lot of the novels, you can see Tarzan dressed as a typical English hunter. So he doesn't necessarily wear his loincloth all the time, and he doesn't necessarily just live as a savage jungle man in the trees.
Right. Many times he dressed as an English nobleman, but that came later. I mean, that evolved over time.
Yes.
Originally, he was buck naked, and then he found different bits and pieces as he went on many different adventures, and eventually, he got the loincloth, and then from the loincloth went to some more proper clothing. But as you can see from the pages of ERB himself, he knew that proper civilized people wore something.
And he found that out from reading his father's books there in the cabin. He learned very early on that he was a man, not an ape. And that's one of the reasons why he never grew a beard. He used his father's knife to shave his face so he did not look like an ape. He wanted to wear clothing, and his first attempt at clothing was when he killed Sabor and took her skin and was going to make himself some clothing out of it, but he did not know the art of tanning hide, and so the skin became rock hard as a board, and he wasn't able to use it. He later found a loincloth when he killed the native who killed his mother.
Right. So his first attempt was a lion that he had killed. That was a lion skin.
Yes. And that didn't work out so well. But the loincloth that he stole from the warrior, from the tribe of natives who killed his mother, that was his first loincloth. He stole all of that man's accompaniments. He stole his bow and arrows. He stole his grass rope. He stole his loincloth and everything after he killed him in revenge for killing Kala, the ape who raised him.
Right.
Now, reading our slide here, at the bottom of the little English heart beat the great desire to cover his nakedness with clothes, for he had learned from the picture books that all men were so covered, while monkeys and apes and every other living thing went naked. That was straight from the novel Tarzan of the Apes. Clothes, therefore, must truly be a badge of greatness, the insignia of the superiority of man over all other animals, for surely there could be no other reason for wearing such hideous things.
You got to think some of the things that he did see people wearing had to be completely ridiculous to wear in the jungle. So not very practical.
And that's my goal tonight, OBS. I want to get people to want to read these books because they're wonderful things, wonderful things. What's Goji Tron saying here? You may be covering this later, but do you think Rudyard Kipling's work had any influence on what Burroughs created? Absolutely, I do. The idea of
Yes.
the feral child is not a new thing. It wasn't a new thing when Burroughs wrote that. It wasn't really a new thing when Kipling wrote the Mowgli story. So I'm sure all of that had some bearing on it. What happened to his dad? I forget, said OBS. His dad was killed by Kerchak, the king of the Mangani tribe that lived nearby. Lady Alice died shortly after the birth of Tarzan, the babe, and the babe was lying in the cradle crying, wanting sustenance, milk that the dead mother could not give to him. Clayton himself was distraught, and he had forgotten to lock the door of the cabin with the ingenious lock that he had invented to keep the animals out. Meanwhile, Kerchak had gone on a mad rampage throughout the tribe, and he had chased Kala, one of his she-apes in his harem, basically, and she had a small baby clinging to her back, and in her rush through the trees to get away from Kerchak's anger, the babe had fallen to its death, and Kala was nursing it in her arms, and Kerchak, seeing what had happened, his rage went away, and he decided to go and destroy the Taramangani with its fire stick that lived nearby, so that he could take the fire stick for his own to become even greater than what he was. So they attacked the cabin, and the door being unlocked, he was able to go in and kill the father.
And that sounds very much like Kipling and the idea of stealing man's red fire.
Yeah. And it was at that point Kala bearing the dead ape child of hers saw Tarzan the babe laying there in the crib alive, and she took her dead baby and put it in the crib and took Tarzan as her own to replace the dead one,
which probably saved his life.
Yeah.
So.
And moving right along here, we can see some of the accoutrements that Tarzan wore. That would be, I believe, either Frank Morel or Elmo Lincoln. I can't remember which. wearing basically the old-fashioned idea of a loincloth, which actually Tarzan did wear. This was the first. This was the first. What he dressed as after he had killed that native and took his clothing. It was the strap, with the, what
Right,
we
the one that
think
goes
of.
over the shoulder that when you
Yeah,
George of the Jungle was known for wearing as well.
yeah, and a lot of times Tarzan was depicted as such. Even the Mego figure had him wearing that. So,
Hmm.
yes, in the Tarzan novels, Tarzan did wear that occasionally.
And then
And
from the Alexander Skarsgård film, this is more what he would dress as Lord Greystoke. This would have been traditional
especially,
for that
especially,
time
especially if
period.
he were back home in England, which he did live for a period of time there in England before he finally just got disgusted with the hypocrisy of mankind and decided to live on his Kenyan estate from then on out. And moving on to the next slide, here we see the filmation Tarzan as depicted with Tantor the elephant, and that would be either Numa the lion, or I would like to think as a Jadbalja the golden lion, which was Tarzan's lion cub that he raised to full adulthood, that was his companion in the books. Uh, if you read Tarzan and the Golden Lion, you can see that story, and it was also adapted into the cartoon. And that brown ape that you see there is the way the Mangani were depicted in that cartoon. Now, beside that is either a painting or a photograph, and I can't tell which. I want to think that it is a painted photograph of the man who may have been the actual real John Clayton.
Right. It was certainly the idea of who John Clayton might have been. And this is where Philip Jose Farmer really went deep and said, what if? What if this guy was based on somebody real? And how would he have actually lived? And when did he live? And he just really explored that and went into a lot of depth in two novels that were somewhat controversial because he also, in those novels, went on to basically create an entire family of heroes that were tied together, including Doc Savage, who we'll talk about in a future spotlight, as well as a few others. And it's very interesting reading. I will caution the lighthearted that it does get a little bit racy because Philip Jose Farmer was not shy about graphic violence or loving, to say the least.
Spicy, very spicy, let's just say. And
Yes.
if you want to hit that rabbit hole, go to Google and put Wall Newton family in there.
Yeah. It's very interesting. So the idea of a crossover or mix of different heroes into a story, this is an older concept. It's been done before. And Philip
Hang
Jose
on just a
Farmer.
second there, Largo. Bjorn
Mhm.
Jorgensen's got to go to bed. I guess he'll catch the rest later. Good night, Bjorn. And he tells everyone to behave themselves. But do not worry, Bjorn, in your absence, we have two new wrenches here in the chat tonight. So, and of course, OBS is also a wrench, and she's really good at it because she does it for other people. So, I'm pretty sure that everybody's going to behave themselves tonight. But going back, go ahead, Largo. I think I interrupted you to say goodnight to Bjorn. Are you froze there, Largo? Largo appears to be frozen. So I will continue to talk here. What you see there in Lord Greystoke's hand is his signature glass of absinthe. And yes, Burroughs depicted Lord Greystoke is drinking a little bit too much absinthe sometimes and smoking a few too many cigarettes at sometimes, especially in his earlier days. And that kind of brings us to the end of tonight's spotlight. We can discuss a lot of that as we go on, but we've lost Largo. He'll try to catch you back up with us. Hopefully, he'll be there. Hey, Rolando Flores, good to see you tonight. So I'm just curious what everyone thinks about tonight's little bit of story. Let's see if we can bring the live chat up here, and I'll put our Harris Largo coming back in now. Here we go.
I'm back.
Yeah, good to see you there, Largo. So we kind of came to the end of our foray into Tarzan of the Apes, and I kind of discussed what Tarzan was drinking there. That was his absinthe. I told everyone that as Burroughs depicted him, he drank a little bit too much absinthe, and he smoked a few too many cigarettes, especially when he first came into contact with humans and was learning the ways of human beings, and I think he developed a taste for absinthe, and he would drink that on occasion. And is there anything else that you wanted to discuss as we got to the end of our spotlight tonight there, Largo?
Well, again, there's much more to this than what we've been able to cover in one evening. We've just scratched the surface. There are comic strips. There are comic books. He was in Marvel and DC. There are plus Dark Horse. There are the television shows, the cartoons, the radio shows. There is a whole bunch of Tarzan out there, and we may come back and visit some of that in a future episode. But the whole idea of this is just to kind of shine a light on some interesting characters that you think you know from pop culture, and to go a little deeper and see where the origins come from and the myth of pop culture today versus where they started.
Absolutely, and Doc Savage and Shadow are going to be cool future topics. Don't you worry, Johnny Sorensen. Largo and I have already decided that Doc Savage is going to be the centerpiece of next week's show on late night. We're going to do all kinds of characters, the Shadow, the Phantom, on and on and on, as many as we can, especially go into pulp fictional characters and possibly even comic strip.
Right. And we'll cover not just not just the pulp fiction heroes, but in the same vein of whatever's weird and fantastic. We'll go down a couple different paths as we continue with this series. If our internet doesn't crash.
Yeah. Well, it's always going to be like this, folks, I think, until either something changes here in Mississippi or Guatemala. Sir Clifton says, I love the video. Talking of Tarzan makes me think of the
Baltimore.
Tarzan boy. Yep. And I don't have a copy of that here, so we can't listen to that. And I probably wouldn't want to play it anyway because
I was going to say, I did find a copy, but it is copyright protected, so we cannot play it. But it is a good song.
And yeah, the Phantom is something I want to cover too, because there's so much to that that a lot of people just don't realize. And what Lee Falk wrote, he did some novels as well as just a comic strip, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a lot to go into in that. Yeah.
Oh yes.
In the Jungle, the Mighty Jungle, the Lion Sleep Tonight. What a wonderful song that was. And Susudio is just happy she can be. Yeah.
Well, good.
So so that kind of brings us to the end of our spotlight on Tarzan. It wasn't exactly a deep dive. We could go into a deep dive maybe someday on some of this stuff, but I think for right now that's probably enough to get you wanting to hear more, and maybe wanting to pick up Tarzan of the Apes. And if you do pick up Tarzan of the Apes, make sure you pick up the second book, The Return of Tarzan, because it's a 2-part story. And OBS wants to know if we can do something on Harryhausen claymation stop motion. That's food for maybe a future episode at some point in the future when we run out of stuff to do on spotlights. What do you think there, Largo?
Yeah, what I would ask is please, in the normal comments, not in the live stream, but in the normal comments, please put some suggestions for anything you want to see us spotlight, and we'll go through those and we'll start making a list and checking it twice.
Absolutely, absolutely, and please do utilize the comment sections. I know that the live chat's been lively tonight and usually is, but we would like for you to utilize the comment sections on our videos as well. We go back and read all of those, and a lot of times answer them as well. And even if you don't have anything to say, just go in and tell us that we did a good job, or tell us what we could do better, or whatever. Yeah, like I said, I think one earlier, either say great video, Bill, or you suck, Bill, or just something in the comments to keep that comment section moving, because that helps feed the YouTube's algorithm, which helps get our videos out there and watched by more than just the usual gang of
misfits and ne'er-do-wells. Yes. So
I hear
Doc Savage.
Eduardo's awake in the middle of the night.
Oh yeah, he's always going. So the Man of Bronze, Doc Savage, will be our next thing we tackle, and then after that, who knows? We'll see. So we'll definitely look at what you guys put in the comments, and the one that gets the most responses, I think, will be the one we do after Doc Savage. What do you think, Bill?
Sounds like a good idea. If you guys will go for that, I mean, we'll certainly make that happen. We've already decided that Doc Savage is going to be what we do for next week, because that's what we've already gotten started on that today. So
yeah, and again, it's a character that some people may or may not know much about, but there's a lot of lore. He's a very interesting character, and again, there have been other characters that have been kind of written after him that borrow a lot of his attributes, because he was another one of those pulp fiction heroes that came out around the 30s, and then as superheroes became popular, a lot of the tropes that came from him were given to guys wearing their spandex and running around in their underwear.
Hobia says, I saw a year ago, Bill, that some of your vids got thousands of views. It's got to be the YouTubes he's being able. Well, every once in a while I drop a video, just a regular video, produced video. I don't get a chance to do it as much as I did a couple of years ago, because I don't have the time to actually cut them together. And Largo can tell you, it takes time to do that. And Largo's got it, and I don't, because he gets to, be a retired man sitting at home with the computer, and I have to go to work and slave away all day long and come home tired as hell. But every once in a while I drop one, and some of those that I've dropped have really gotten the views. 24,000, I think, was that was the one on my He-Man action figures when I showcased them, and it went, I guess, sort of viral for me, not for the big boys, but for a little guy like me. 24,000 views, that's quite a bit. And it's kind of what spurred me to try to do a little more on YouTube, and that's what led to me doing live streams. So yeah.
Yep.
And thank you, Sir Clifton. Yes, everybody hit like and subscribe as
Please.
You go down and hit the comment section. I don't think the comment section becomes visible until after the live stream is over, but once the comment section gets live, I want you guys to fill it up with all kinds of interesting things for us. And YouTube's is a fickle pickle. It absolutely is.
That's true.
Yeah. And I guess I can give y'all a little hint of what I want to try to touch on tomorrow's show. Let me pull up the toy cam. Here we go. There's Tarzan sitting first and forefront there. I had him out because we were playing with him the other day. That is the Trendmaster Tarzan. And those batteries that you sent me, OBS, I was able to use them to make him do his Tarzan yell, which I'm going to take them out when I put him away. But, and as you can see, he's carrying a spear and shield along with his knife, and he's got his father's locket around his neck there, which was also from the book. So Trendmaster did an excellent job with this figure for what it was at the time. And we're we're going to look at the Ghostbuster toys from the revival that they did a year or so ago when they showed those.
Bill, can you show Tarzan again? He was a little too tiny. People want to see him again.
Sure. This is the Trendmaster Tarzan that came out based upon Tarzan the Epic Adventures, which was a television show that came out in the late 90s. That was kind of sort of like the Kevin Sorbo Hercules and Xena the Warrior Princess TV shows. The production values were about the same on that. And there was also a novelization based upon the first episode of that. But Trendmaster did a series of toys based upon that. And they also included John Carter of Mars in those, which was one of the only times I know of that John Carter of Mars had action figures. But
yeah, he didn't even. I don't think he even got figures for the Disney movie that came out a few years ago, which is unfortunate.
I can't remember. May have been. I don't remember. But yeah, this was an excellent figure. And Tarzan wasn't above using a native shield or a spear. What he doesn't have here is his signature grass rope. Tarzan learned to make grass ropes, and one of the first things he would do whenever he returned to the jungle was make himself a rope, and he used that rope a lot.
Yeah. OBS says she doesn't remember that particular TV show, and it was only on for maybe one season, and then it kind of went away.
It was a one-season one. They were going to do a second season, but it never came to fruition.
It wasn't terrible, and if you're interested, it is available on Hulu. They are re-showing it on Hulu right now. But yeah, the Hercules and Xena were a lot more popular.
Yeah, I actually had a DVD copy of that Tarzan series that I acquired. Let's just say.
OBS wants to know: do you have the you have the station, the firehouse, the original firehouse?
I do have the original vintage firehouse. Yes, these figures here are not vintage figures. There was a what did they call that? The re-release figures that they kind of re-released them, but they're actually not the actual figures. They look like them, but they're actually new molds made to look like the old figures.
Right. In some ways, they're a little bit more upgraded because they used better plastic. Some of the old original ones are kind of brittle now, at least their accessories.
Especially the neutrino ones, yes. The Swamp Thing TV series, I've got that on DVD. That's an interesting TV series, I'll tell you that. It was
Swamp Thing would be another good one to spotlight at some point because he's got a very interesting lore as well.
Now the DC Comics had a streaming service that kind of got swallowed by HBO Max, and they tried to do a Swamp Thing TV series on that. I think it lasted one season and pretty much didn't go anywhere, but for a period of time you could watch that. And I don't know if it's available on HBO Max now. I don't think it is, but it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Alien Nation was a very good television show. I liked that. And wasn't that based upon the TV show was based upon the movie, right?
Yes. And yeah, it was very good sci-fi. But, I think we might call it a little early tonight, Bill, because one, our internet is goofy, and two, we've had a long week.
Yeah, we have. It's been very good, and I appreciate everyone sticking with us for as long as you have. It's been a great night, and we've covered a lot. And I think it's just time to call this one at the end. It's kind of late, so I'll just tell everybody, y'all have a good journey, and we'll see y'all next time. Special thanks to these supporters on Patreon. Without your help, these adventures would not be possible. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's adventure, Please hit like and subscribe and share the video.